Hi everyone. Today I wanted to talk about the 1973 movie Ludwig. This is directed by Luchino Visconti. Stars Helmut Berger as Ludwig, Romy Schneider as the Empress Elizabeth, his older cousin, Ludwig's older cousin, and Trevor Howard as Richard Wagner. This is an Arrow release from 2017 in the UK, now being sold in Arrow and Indicator are selling many of their movies in the US, so this is one of the first US releases, just I think maybe perhaps last month. And Ludwig was the Mad King of Bavaria, a very famous figure and very interesting figure for sure. He becomes king when he was only 18 years old. He had a childhood education that was steeped in the arts, but he was totally unprepared for his duties as king, his duties for governing, understanding the physical situation. As king, he wants to create beautiful things. He wants to live in a world of beauty. And he admires and wants to finance those artists that create beauty, in particular Richard Wagner. And Wagner at this point was a very disreputable figure. He always owed a lot of money everywhere. He lived well. He lived a lifestyle well above what he could afford, and his music was very controversial. But Ludwig loved it, and so he pays off all of Wagner's debts. He installs him to living in a mansion. He finances his operas. He even builds an opera house for him in Beirut, all on the state's money. Of course, this creates a great deal of animosity division between the king and the government itself. And Ludwig just, he can't change. He cannot accept mediocrity in life. He becomes increasingly isolated, paranoid, as he's forced to fight wars and do things that are ugly, in the ugly side of life. He doesn't want to be a part of it. He resists it. He's also struggling with his homosexual desires. He is in love with his older cousin, Elizabeth, Empress of Austria, and they have a very close friendship, but it's an impossible love. It can never be consummated. So he feels more and more isolated. The film is punctuated by these interspersed witnesses who, right from the beginning, we're getting an idea, or we're getting testimony by people in the government, people who were in the court, the court of Ludwig, who describe his failing mental capacity because they want to depose him. It's sort of like, if you've ever seen Warren Beatty's Reds, where there's these witnesses, where the film itself sort of stops to listen to the witnesses. But the film it's 4 hours long, and I thought, boy, I'm not good with 4-hour movies. I watched it in 2 nights, but I was eager to get to this part 2. It's really it might bore people because it's languorous, it's contemplative. It's not like the melodramas of Senso or The Dam. Visconti was his operatic melodramas. This isn't like that, although there are melodramatic moments, to be sure. But and then on this Arrow release, we're given the option of watching the Italian version or the English language version, and we're also given the option between watching the 4-hour theatrical cut, Visconti's preferred cut, or the 2.5-hour cut that was released with the English language version, because all the actors spoke English in this film. Helmut Berger spoke perfect English, as did Romy Schneider, of course, with German accents. Then you had Trevor Howard with a British accent, John Mulder Brown playing Ludwig's younger brother, Otto. And then we have a bunch of Italian actors, Gert Frobe with his German accent. So it's a kind of a mishmash of accents. So I watched it. I chose the 4-hour Italian language version. A lot of the reasons because I think Italian is such a beautiful language and it's very poetic here. And I was glad I did because Giancarlo Giannini voices Ludwig. I don't think Giannini was a star yet in the Lina Wertmüller movies that propelled him to stardom. He gives a magnificent performance. Berger is good too, and even in the English language version, some people complain that he was too shrill. I only watched about the first hour of the English language version, so it might, eventually become that way. But Giannini is fantastic, and these long monologues, just powerful, powerful performance. And there's trade-offs there though, because when I did watch the English language version, especially Trevor Howard as Wagner, great performance. The part that he's in much of the first half of the film. But the bad part of watching the English language version is because it was cut down to 2.5 hours. That's the 2.5 hours that was dubbed or that used the English cut. So you have to, and all the cuts were restored, but it's in Italian. So you have scenes that are in Italian, and then you have some scenes, part of the scene is in English, part of the scene is in Italian. It's very distracting. So I would probably recommend the Italian version, especially to not have those distractions and to hear Giancarlo Giannini's terrific performance. And in the supplements, we get a documentary, 1-hour documentary on Visconti. It's a very broad survey of his entire career. And if you don't know much about Visconti, it's well worth watching. Silvano Mangano, who plays Richard Wagner's mistress and then his wife, there's about a half-hour documentary on her life, which I knew very little about. She was married to Dino De Laurentiis. He hated to act, but he's always forcing into making movies. I think she only made about 40 movies in her career, and she loved working with Visconti. She and Visconti were great friends, and I think she was in 3 or 4 Visconti movies. When we get an interview from 2016 with star Helmut Berger, and boy, he's loopy. He's a strange dude, but I enjoyed it. You never know what's gonna come out of his mouth. And then we get an interview with the producer, Dieter Geisler, and he's the one that gives you the torturous post-production history, but he also was the producer. Part of his duties was to get these actual castles, so we see the exteriors, the interiors, everything was filmed on location, and they're fantastic. I mean, this is such a gorgeous, gorgeous looking film. Then I guess the interview that I really loved was the one with Suso DAmico, and she was the screenwriter, and she had she worked on with many of the great Italian directors, including Antonioni, but particularly with Visconti. And she is, and this is an interview I guess from around 2010, and she is just a delightful interview. I mean, she tells so many terrific stories, and it's filmed in the same room where all the different production teams met. The directors, Visconti or Mario Monticelli. She worked on many of the Big Deal on Madonna Street was one of her films. She tells an interesting story that has nothing to do with Ludwig, but I just enjoyed the story. And this was about the movie Roman Holiday, which was filmed in Italy. It was Audrey Hepburn's breakout role, and Gregory Peck was in it. But there was a script. She said she was handed a script by Wyler that was signed by Ben Hecht, and Wyler says, just start from scratch, just do whatever, you write your own screenplay. And she said, well, what, Ben Hecht was an idol of her. She was a cinema fanatic. She knew, and especially on American movies. So she said, well, where's Ben Hecht? Oh, you don't have to worry about that. We'll tell him what's going on. He'll be fine with it. So she writes the screenplay with her partner, I forget his name, Fiano, I think his name was, and they wrote the screenplay, and according to her, that was the screenplay that was filmed by William Wyler. But Ben Hecht is not on the credits as the screenwriter. There's another screenwriter. But both of them were fronting for Dalton Trumbo, and Trumbo eventually, in the story, got an Oscar. The screenplay was nominated for Academy Award. But in the production history that I found on Wikipedia for this film, there's no mention that the actual screenplay was written by DAmico and her partner. So that's just an arcane bit of Hollywood history. You never know with the credits, especially with the writers. There's always, but she was used to that collaborative nature. You know, like she didn't mind when other people's names were put on the writers. That sometimes they would use the name of a writer that never actually worked on the film, and. But they had a prestigious name. It was part of, oh, you know, so-and-so is going to get money from the financiers. So I love this movie. I was amazed. I was surprised. I thought, boy, this is going to be a slog, and it was nothing of the kind. I've really gotten to love Luchino Visconti's movies. I have also would highly recommend, if you're interested in Visconti, this book by Henry Bacon, Visconti, Explorations of Beauty and Decay. His chapter on Ludwig is just, it's just absolutely brilliant. Okay, so I about wrap this one up. Thanks as always for everybody who managed to listen to me. I really appreciate it. You guys take care.